Modern outdoor cultivation of cannabis has taken on certain challenges because of prohibition. The work is far more strenuous than growing zucchinis in California. And if you don't think so, try carrying 80 pounds of soil for a kilometer up a mountain, like these guys, several times a day.
Let's see, I think I was first introduced to some really ragweed of Mexican variety. And, you know, it was such an incredible experience in terms of expansive experience that I started to look at reality in a different way.
People don't all this leaves. People don't want to smoke this leaf.
Seriously. Too bushy.
Trim it nice and tight so that what you're getting is the flower of the ganja, not the leaves of the
look,
ganja.
He's trimming them right on. Look what he's doing.
How many days are you guys going to be doing this?
Oh,
25?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, now that the cops have showed up, probably only about another 10 minutes.
It entails a lot of love. I mean, for us to be with these plants, it takes a lot of dedication. It's not like the zucchini that you might just like get too big and forget about. To grow this plant properly, you have to be with it a lot. We grow organically here. That's very important to us, primarily important. We see this as medicine, and it's so important for this medicine to be as pure as it can be, and that means growing from the natural soils and the things that we can add to it that come from nature. I'm so not into chemical drugs, and I know people are because they can get a bigger return for it. That's not our prayer when we grow this. I live in southern British Columbia in a rural community. This community is kept alive by the ganja industry. We don't have many jobs here. So the beautiful thing is we have this, which provides for so many families. And it also, in the workaday world, nobody understands this, but it also allows families to be together, to have a lot of quality time.
The marijuana business is just a little bit different. It really is amazing the people that get involved in producing marijuana, people that you would have no problem having as your neighbor or your friend. So I'm not an advocate of marijuana. I want you to understand that. I'm not saying go out there and smoke marijuana. But my view is fairly simple on the issue of marijuana versus other drugs. It's a harm reduction issue. I mean, you take cannabis out of the equation, there's going to be something else. And as far as I'm concerned, everything else is worse, including alcohol.
If smoking a joint gets you high, if that's what you need, you have a crutch in your life, you should be allowed to have a crutch. Somebody's got a broken leg, they need a crutch, they walk with it for a while. Somebody's got a broken spirit or not feeling so well, then of course they're going to want to have that little toke. It takes you out of that space, that problem, it helps move blocks.
I just wish there wasn't so much stigma around it, that it wasn't just seen as a plant. What's the difference between my beautiful ganja plant and my tomato plant? If it's giving me nourishment and vitality, what's the problem?
The freedom, the basic freedom to be able to alter your consciousness, which is what could be more fundamental than that as a freedom? I mean, that's a pretty fundamental freedom.
But certainly the criminal law to say a 50-year-old man can't twist up a joint, make that decision, when you can go and buy a package of cigarettes and give your money to the profits of an industry that kills over 45,000 people a year in this country, that's just absurd that people can't say, no, I think my choice is going to be marijuana.
When you look at who's against the war, who's the most tolerant of interracial access in our society, the pot people. The pot people, in fact, are very creative people. Stephen Jobs developed Apple computers while smoking pot. Bill Gates was a pot smoker, along with Paul Allen, who's still a pot smoker, who are the founders of Microsoft. Moses Neimer of City TV and Much Music, pot smokers. Ted Turner developed CNN on smoking marijuana every day, and he still to this day smokes a lot of marijuana. Jack Nicholson, Brad Pitt, Charlize Theron, you go through every member of Hollywood's luminaries and stars, they smoke marijuana. Every person who ever put together an album, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, every reggae artist, every blues artist, every jazz artist, they're all pot smokers.
What I've always said that for me what marijuana does is it stimulates the right side of your brain. The side of your brain that's into creativity, that's into, that loses the consciousness of space and time.
This, to me, is medicine. Not just a recreational drug, but I use this to relieve stress at the end of the day. Just a couple puffs and it mellows me out.
To relate that to the feminine consciousness and the sort of Mother Earth type consciousness, as opposed to the patriarchy, which is all about the phallus and going out and conquering the world, left brain stuff, you know. Right. So that it's always been, for me anyway, the pathway to that side of my mind, that creative part. I don't. When I get high, I don't get like stupid. Right. You know, I mean, it doesn't make me bump into walls and go, "Hey, dude, where's my car?" Right. I mean, that's an image of marijuana that I shun. Right. Like the stupid stoner.
I kind of like cannabis in British Columbia. I know a lot of people who smoke it. I don't anymore. But I know a lot of people who do, and they're nice people, and particularly younger people. And I think there's something like a cannabis culture in Vancouver, which I think is kind of nice. People tend to be vegetarians. They tend to ride bicycles, and they tend to smoke dope, and that seems fine to me. They're nice, intelligent young people. I meet some of them through my own children.
Sure, I enjoy to smoke cannabis, or you know. I'm trying not to smoke it all day long. But sure, I smoke cannabis, yeah.
Most people refer to something or other that they're addicted to these days. I think of myself as inclined to a few regrettably bad habits, except that I'm positively addicted to one chemical substance: air. So I inquired about the nature of addiction.
I never have believed, and I still don't believe, that marijuana usage leads to harder drugs. I've never believed that, and I don't believe the evidence is there, though that it's often portrayed like that in the media.
Addiction is a word in the English language, and Shakespeare used it, and Jane Austen used it, and Winston Churchill used it, and it's a good word. It refers to the fact that people are sometimes given over to a narrow kind of lifestyle that excludes everything else.
I don't want this to become a young child's drug addiction. I want this to be used as medicine.
What I've observed is that for young boys who are 13 or 14, smoking heavy use of marijuana can actually have a negative impact. Occasional use is another thing. It's going to be normal, but a heavy use of marijuana at that age, I think, is directly detrimental to their endocrine, hormonal health and brain development. It does have an effect on their motivation. They lack motivation to pursue other goals.
Some people get addicted to marijuana, and some people get addicted to heroin, and some people get addicted to alcohol, and some people get addicted to coffee. But for most of these drugs, most people don't get addicted to it. My viewpoint is that marijuana as an addictive substance, as an addictive problem, marijuana is not different than 1,000 other psychoactive drugs. The people who get addicted to marijuana get addicted to it in the same reason that some people, that they might get addicted to anything, whether it's eating too much or drinking too much or anything.
I don't know, in my case, I really felt like there was aspects where I was feeling a psychological addiction to it, because it feels so good. You know, you feel really good when you first smoke pot.
Addiction is enslavement. I mean, addiction is a strong word. It's not a trivial word. And I'm talking now about the origins of the word, both in English and Latin. It's a strong word. You say somebody's addicted, you mean they're given over to something. They don't have much life left when they're done with that something. My experience with people who have been addicted to marijuana is that they're, you know, unfortunate people who really don't have much to live for and are, you know, anxious and kind of lost, and they can glom onto to marijuana and the marijuana culture to the exclusion of everything else. They don't, you know, really have real lives, and that's marijuana addiction. On the other hand, I mean, I know lots of people who smoke marijuana for whom that description has no bearing. There's nothing to do with them. They're just people who smoke marijuana, and they may smoke it every day, and that has nothing to do with addiction.
I mean, what is our definition of the range between recreation and medicine, right? My recreation in my personal life is also my medicine. You know, when I go for a run in the mountains and go, you know, pound out my anxiety through an hour running through those trails, that's recreation, and that is a key part of my medicine. So I don't necessarily believe that I can judge that if you're sitting around with your buddies smoking a joint and you're having a good time while you use your cannabis that is allowing you to gain your weight and allowing you to go to sleep and allowing you to take your medicine, I can't say that's not medicine.
Most of the pot, though, in the U.S. is grown by American citizens for American citizens in the U.S. Corn Belt. Most of the folks who go to the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam are Americans. The people who come to the Toker's Bowl in Vancouver and these sorts of things are usually Americans coming here to do what they can't do in the United States and enjoying it. And I say, you know, we should be taking advantage of this. Why aren't we focused on growing the good marijuana, opening coffee shops along the borders, providing places for Americans, citizens to come and imbibe in the stuff if they want to? They can leave it here in lock boxes and go back without having to take it into their country. It would be a boon to our economy.
You may think it's just cannabis, but no, it's the survival of our species and our war against multinational corporations who are controlling oil. In God we trust. Guns, oil, drugs. That's what we're fighting against.
When you really look at the details of it, how hemp would change the world if it were legalized. I mean, it would affect the cotton industry, which is a huge industry. It would affect the paper industry, which is another huge industry, two of which badly pollute the world now as it is. And then the petroleum industry, the three big companies that are responsible for a lot of the pollution and the harm that's being done to our environment. Those companies would virtually be put out of business if hemp were ever completely brought into and utilized in the society the way it should be.
The American Declaration of Independence was printed on paper made from hemp, which was widely cultivated by the early colonies. George Washington was one of the early American leaders who promoted its cultivation and use. Hemp production in the US and Canada was common throughout World War I and II, when it was used for ropes and uniforms. In 1941, Henry Ford manufactured a plastic automobile made from hemp oil. Lighter than steel, and powered by a hemp-based ethanol fuel, it could withstand an impact 10 times greater than steel without denting. Only after the creation of synthetic and oil-based fibers after World War II did the cultivation of hemp in North America fall into decline. The history of this herb, known and appreciated by humankind for millennia, is summarized by the names ascribed to it by the ancients, who referred to it as the morsel of thought, the shrub of emotion, the branches of bliss.
Imagine you're an MS patient and your muscle spasms and your tremors are so serious that in the morning you can't make your own toast, you can't pull on your own pants, and you can't bathe yourself. And you found something that allows you to do all of those things for yourself.
we have so much intention that this will reach the right hands, that this will be medicine for who it reaches. Anna, we always say prayers with it, that it will find the person who needs this healing energy.
Imagine that you are facing death and that you have an incredible amount of fear and you're in an incredible amount of pain, and you found something that relieves the pain and also brings you a sense of joy and allows you a different kind of opening and a different kind of acceptance into the into the death that you're facing.
I live in the neighborhood and I had a bad accident. I'm in so much pain. I came out of a coma after 5 months. 5 months in a coma. And we're here getting high. The Compassion Club.
So we distribute medicinal cannabis to over 3,000 people who are have critical and chronic illnesses who require medicinal cannabis to deal with the side effects of their medications and deal with the symptoms of their disease. We draw people in off the street to access this medicinal cannabis. Then they're exposed to all of the alternative health care that's available here. And we have seen some tremendous healing when people are, they use cannabis to get their symptoms under control and to get their quality of life up so that they're even well enough to come in for a session with an herbalist, or they're well enough to even, they have their pain under control enough that they can even lie down on a massage table. And in conjunction with cannabis as a piece of sort of an overall health plan or program, that's where we've seen tumors shrink and viral loads drop and livers being repaired and addictions being dealt with and traumas being healed and some of the really true fundamental healing happening. And it's a pretty amazing thing. So we're serving over 3,000 people. There's almost 100 different diagnoses that we have, that our members have. And these are all people that have received recommendations to use cannabis either from an allopathic physician, a Western doctor, which is a Western doctor, or a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, or a naturopathic doctor. And about 80-90% have come from a regular doctor.
I can't understand why people would want to pay all the money and take all those pharmaceutical drugs for stress relief when we have something as beautiful as this growing in our backyard. I've never taken a pharmaceutical that I can think of for pain relief.
I've been in rural and urban practice as a doctor for over 30 years. My main interest is in combining natural medicine and conventional medicine, taking the best of both worlds. I listen to my patients. I learn a lot from them. I've prescribed marijuana through the Compassion Club for several patients, for chronic pain, for depression in one case, and for a couple of other patients we've tried to go through the process for multiple sclerosis.
I never smoked marijuana before I got multiple sclerosis, but since getting multiple sclerosis, I was so shaky in my knees and my legs. They were shaking all the time. And it stops me from shaking. And also I was getting chemotherapy from the MS clinic, and that was making me throw up constantly. And the cannabis, of course, helps tremendously with that.
This is called the Burmese. It's very nice. It's a little yellow, and the buds are considerably smaller than the indica sativa buds. This is good for people with depression, people who need energy, people who need to get out of bed. And we have some cookies here. We have baked goods. These have very much indica effects. They're good for the body. It doesn't affect your mind as much as the cannabis does. It comes in, we have olive oil. We also provide butter. These are different tinctures. It's a pleasure to share this with you.
Yeah, I agree. To share with me too.
People often don't believe me when I tell them about the wide range of symptoms that cannabis can address. When you tell them that there's one plant that will relieve nausea, stimulate appetite, that stimulates the opiate receptors and lets people dramatically reduce the amount of opiate-based painkillers that they're on, that it can prevent seizures, that if you give it to somebody after they have a stroke, it's going to prevent or dramatically reduce the kind of brain damage that happens after a stroke, that it will relieve muscle spasms and tremors, that it will address migraine headaches.